Welcome to Envy's Donut, a podcast about everything, anything, and nothing in between. Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode. Our guest tonight is my friend Tyler. How are you, Tyler? Hello.
Doing good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm really happy to have you. Who are you, Tyler? What are you doing? Where are you coming from? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. I am coming to you from the UK, same as you, and I'm actually Canadian. I don't sound like I'm from the UK because I'm Canadian. And I currently work for a very popular board game manufacturer. I work as a project manager and a pre-press specialist in the hobby board game industry. And that's how we met.
What is your background, Tyler?
Prior to this position, I actually was a professional dancer for most of my adult life. And that changed when I moved to the UK about 7 years ago. And I was looking for a career change. And the board game industry and my company that I work for now was my goal. So I decided when I moved that I wanted to change careers anyways. And I decided at that point that I was going to go go all in and try to get the job that I wanted. So I moved into print. Didn't have any experience in it prior, but I had been kind of self-teaching how to use graphics programs like the Adobe Suite, and using online tools and my own projects to teach myself all about game design, board game design, and the industry and print production. To prepare myself for an opportunity when a position would open up. So that was kind of where I went to when I moved to the UK. I went to a plastic card company first, which was life in the trenches. I was doing what I do now, but a lot more intense and just an 8-hour grind of doing digital proofs for print. But it taught me all the ins and outs that I needed to know for pre-press for my current position. I did that for 18 months. When I learned everything I could, then I moved to a different position at a different company, and I actually worked on the factory floor at a print company doing retail displays, large format visual merchandising for a lot of fairly big brand names, international names and UK brand names. And that taught me the other side of print, which is the actual running machines, setting things up for print, finishing, laminating, like literally taking something from the artwork files all the way through to putting putting material onto the spools for the printers, cleaning the printers, printing things, trimming them, laminating, finishing them, wrapping them up, and getting them ready for shipping pretty much from start to finish. So that gave me the knowledge of the practical side of manufacturing and print production, all the while working on game designs, board game designs, and kind of getting my feet in the industry through conventions and through meeting people and play testing to kind of give me a well-rounded set of features, I suppose, for when it came time to hire. And it took me 4 rounds of hiring till I finally got through, and I've been with the company now for 3 years.
Yeah, that's great. Well, but what pushed you to choose printing in the first place?
It was always board games. That was always the key. As a kid, my best friend and I, we used to love playing tabletop games. We never really played them as they were supposed to be played. Like we had the old Hero Quest, but we'd kind of just cannibalize it for its pieces and then kind of make up our own games out of it. We used to love playing old Super Nintendo games like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy. But we were more interested in kind of making our own versions. We would take like big poster papers and draw world maps and make up characters like a role-playing game, and then or use Lego to kind of make our own adventures. And my buddy, he was always into like the narrative. He'd always kind of come up with the plot and the characters. And I would come up with the mechanisms, the kind of the role-playing game mechanisms, like how your characters move and how enemies react and how to hit and deal damage and weapon stats and armor stats and all that kind of stuff. I'd spend my Saturday mornings basically writing rule books on and doing stats and stuff for how all this equipment would work. I spent every weekend at my buddy's house, and they had a rule at the house that I couldn't call before 9 o'clock in the morning. So I'd be up at like 5 a.m., watch, Dragon Ball Z or Ultraman that was on early in the morning, then spend the next like 4 hours just designing RPGs for using Lego pieces. And 9 o'clock on the dot, I'd call him, I'd head over to his place, and then we would, play the game that I kind of created. he would kind of unfold the story, and I would go through the mechanisms, and we would play. So that was kind of my early passion in tabletop games and game design. It stuck with me my whole life, but when you become a teenager, you kind of move into other things, and that's when I started dancing. And that was that was kind of my passion. How I expressed myself was through dancing, and then eventually through teaching and choreography. And that was kind of my way to kind of craft an experience for an audience. That was my way of expressing my desire to always do that, to create something, some kind of escapism to take, and in this case, an audience for dance, take them away on a short little adventure somewhere. And I found a lot of passion and drive in choreography and teaching in that regard. And so during that, in my teenage years, then my young adult years, game design always took a back burner. It was always in the back of my mind. I always reverted to it just kind of for fun and for creativity. I love to write as well, but yeah, it was just always back there. And then over time as a dancer, you kind of come to the realization that you can't do it forever. I taught quite a lot. I went to college for business, and I taught in the evenings to pay my way through, to pay for tuition. And I really enjoyed teaching, but I taught hip hop, breakdancing, which was a lot of fun, but it's very physical, and it is constantly evolving. And you really gotta spend a lot of time and a lot of effort and have a lot of passion to keep learning in order to keep teaching, right? If I didn't have the passion to learn, then it wasn't really right for me to teach in a certain way. I kind of came to that realization as my passion kind of dwindled for the art form. So did my passion for teaching in particular. I mean, I love teaching. I love it. But yeah, when your passion for the art form kind of fades, it's not a lot of fun being a teacher, teach something you're not passionate about, right? I think passion comes first when it comes to being a good teacher and good instructor. So that kind of led me to finding a career change. I didn't want to dance professionally anymore. I didn't want to teach dance anymore. So I kind of fell back on, well, what do I want to do, right? I went to school for business. I went to school for marketing first. I completed a diploma, applied for the first sales marketing job I could find. Did a one-day trial day at a marketing company, I guess. I wouldn't really call it a firm. And it was pretty much just door-to-door sales. It was the most awful day of my life, probably. And I did one day, and I was like, I'm not doing marketing. That's it. So I applied for school again to go back and decided to go into accounting, because I thought I always wanted to run my own business, perhaps. My father ran his own business. And accounting is the language of business. And I thought no matter what career I go into, having an accounting background is going to be helpful no matter what. So I went into accounting, and then I got an internship at one of the largest accounting firms in the world, and I did a summer internship. And that is pretty much when my life took a different direction. That was when during that internship, I also directed and produced my own dance production at the same time. And I actually applied for a dance company to go full-time into training in Vancouver, Canada. And I kind of had that choice to go either full on into corporate life and being an accountant, or quitting the firm and living my dream of being a dancer. And yeah, when I left the firm and didn't accept the contract they offered me, they thought I was joking, because who would turn that down to go become a dancer? But I did. So I spent a year training. Well, I was training my whole life since I was 12, but I spent a full year full-time training in dance, and then went on cruise line, Princess Cruises, to become a professional dancer for many years, which is where I met my wife, which is how I ended up moving to the UK, because she's English. And as I said, after about 4 years on the ships, teaching in between contracts, this was after I was pretty much a full-time teacher in college. That was when I decided to make the switch. I said my passion kind of ran out for dance and for teaching dance, and games were always in the background. And I thought, well, what could I sit and do for 8 hours a day that's not dancing? And I found that before moving to the UK, my wife and I spent a year long distance. I saved up money teaching dance in Canada while she was in the UK. And after I was done teaching every night, I would go to a coffee shop, and I would just work on game design and graphic design for about 8 hours straight, just hyped up on coffee and learning the programs and learning about the industry, having podcasts on, listening to podcasts about the board game industry while I was designing. And just did that every single night, all day on weekends, pretty much, between some yoga classes, which I still enjoy. And that was kind of it. I thought to myself, what can I do for 8 hours a day? Well, I am literally spending all of my free time doing game design and graphic design for board games. So let's give it a go. And so I moved to the UK. That's what I did.
So basically, you grow out of dancing. You were too old to be a dancer, and you think you're too young not to do games.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say I was too old to be a dancer. I mean, I have many friends that still dance professionally. I have a few injuries that restricted me, but the biggest thing, that's kind of more an excuse, is I could have kept going, I suppose, if I wanted to, but my passion left. Being a professional dancer is quite difficult. It takes a certain kind of personality, very much like a professional athlete. There's a lot of pressure on you all the time when you're performing. I used to enjoy it a lot. That was how I expressed myself. I got to become a character and be somebody different every single night, and it was a lot of fun. But after a while, the pressure of performing, if you make a mistake, I put a lot of pressure on myself. It just induced a lot of anxiety over time. And it just wasn't healthy after a while. It was becoming quite toxic to me. Some people get through it. Some people push through it. Some people just endure it. Some dancers never have to deal with that. Some dancers, their personality or their upbringing or their background has allowed them to be immune to that kind of anxiety. But for me, it just became too much and kind of killed the passion for me. So, yes, I had to jump into my other passion and try and make a career out of it. We spend 8 hours a day at least, a third of our lifetime, about half of our waking life at work. I was always somebody who always wanted to do whatever job I did, I had to have a passion for it, or I had to be learning something worthwhile. I've done many different jobs throughout my life, and I always took a job that I would learn something from. And so, I got to the point where I wanted to do something else. My passion kind of left. I needed something new. I let my passion drive me and my desire to learn, and that led me to where I am. And I'm fortunate that with the company I'm with now, they're constantly evolving, and I am learning something every single day. So I've been with them for 3 years, and not a day goes by that I don't learn something new. So I hope to be here for a long time, because I don't think that this company will ever stop adapting to an industry that is constantly changing anyways. That's how I got here.
A long way around. That's good to do something you really like and you're passionate about. Tyler, what do you think was the lowest point in your life? What was the worst episode that you've experienced?
I think I had a couple rough years. I think the first one that comes to mind right away was when I actually moved away to Vancouver to train full time as a dancer. I had all my friends, all my family were in my hometown. At that point, as I went to college. I was teaching during college, so I hadn't actually been training as a dancer for probably 6 or 7 years. So I was quite out of practice. And the dance industry also evolves very quickly if you don't keep up with it. So when I moved to Vancouver, I mean, these dancers were some of the best in the entire country that I was training with, and I don't think it was any lie that I was way behind where they were at. I was way in over my head. So that was a very difficult year, being away from home, being fully living on my own for the first time probably ever. I did some backpacking when I was younger as well, but it was a bit different. I had rent to pay. I wasn't living under my parents' roof. I was training every day with people who were, far more advanced than I was. I had decided as well that I was going to go all in to dance, so I was going to find work as a dancer as well as train to pay for rent and pay for the tuition for training. And so it was just constant auditions, which is just pitting you against other dancers who are, once again, some of the best in the country, against a lot of anxiety, a lot of loneliness, and just a lot of pressure I put on myself, which was probably the beginning of the end, to be honest. The beginning of my professional dance career, but the beginning of the end of my passion for dance, because it was a very difficult year. But it led to a lot of great things. It allowed me to work on cruise ships. I got to see the world, and I met my wife. So it was the best thing I ever did. But it was a very, very, very difficult year to get through.
Well, I'm sure if I'll ask you about the person that changed your life, you're going to say your wife. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I did not expect to be living in the UK, moving away from home. So yeah, that was definitely a pretty big turning point in my life. But I guess you can kind of tell that when I am passionate about something or want something, I jump in head first without looking back, just like with the dance training, just like with my career in games, and just like with my wife. It was Didn't matter where in the world she was from, I was going to follow her, and I went full in, gave it everything I got. So yeah, that was definitely a big turning point that I did not expect. I was not looking for it, but usually the best things happen to you when you're not looking for them, right? So yeah, for sure.
That's a big commitment, yeah, changing not only country but the continent as well.
Yep, continent, and by proxy my career, right? I mean that the move to the UK was also the trigger that took me away from dance and into something new.
What about a book or an event that changed your life? Do you have something like that?
Yeah, actually, I just started rereading one of my favorite books. This book I've read a couple of times in my life. I tend to go back to it every probably 6 or 7 years. And every single time I do, I learn. I come back to the book as a totally different person than I was the last time I read it. And I get a whole lot more out of it every time I go back to it. I think it's one of those books I will continue to read throughout my entire life. The book is called A New Earth, Awakening Your Life's Purpose by Eckhart Tolle. It is a book that is all about your ego, and not ego as in like being egotistical, like being cocky, but ego as in your inner voice, I suppose, and like the negative inner voice and your perceived identity and your perceived role in your life and the world. And it was an absolutely profound book. I know the first time I read it, it had such a profound and tangible, practical influence on me. There was a definite me before the first time I read this book and a me after the book. And the after version of myself is so much better and happier than the version of me before. It's one of those books I wish I would have read as a teenager, probably. I don't know if it would have been mature enough to really grasp it, but I think those are the years when your ego starts to develop, and those voices in your head, those negative voices in your head start to develop. And I wish that I was better equipped back then, because I would have been much better equipped throughout my entire adult life. But it's a book I recommend for anyone. By far, one of the most influential book of my life is A New Earth.
That's great. I'm gonna add it on my wish list.
Yeah, do it. It's available in print, obviously, but it's also there's an audiobook as well, narrated by the author, which I always appreciate. I like to hear the author's words in the author's own voice. So I think everyone should read it. It should be mandatory reading for all, I think.
I will definitely. Thank you. So, how did that book change you? I mean, what changed about how you perceive the world?
I mean, there's a lot to unpack in the book, but the main message of it is this idea of this egoic self. There's this voice, that tells you you should be a certain way, that you have a certain role, this identity that you how you identify with the roles in your life and with material things and in relationships, and just the idea of like recognizing this ego and these voices and acknowledging them and being able to kind of step outside and view yourself from like an objective angle. And it's coming from, I read this when I was on the cruise ships, as I said, which was when I started to get those very that anxiety and those a lot of those negative feelings and thoughts that initiated when I went to train for that year in dance. And it just really helped me start to recognize those voices when telling myself, oh, you're not good enough, or you need to, train harder, or oh, you made a mistake on stage. All those things you just beat yourself up over, or when something new is happening, or you want to go for a new job and you say to yourself, oh no, I can't do it, or the imposter syndrome, which any game designer in the board game industry kind of knows what the imposter syndrome is. It's just those voices that just keep dragging you down. Things like when you're angry about something, you keep going over the same thing in your head again and again and again about something you're angry about or something that you're sad about, or when you don't allow yourself to be happy when you make progress in your life, or when you make accomplishments in your life. There's a difference between being humble and being cocky when you accomplish something great in your life, but this book just helps you kind of remove all those negative thoughts about that and just enjoy your life and be more open to experiences. It was just really profound how to just get outside your own head, which a lot of us spend far too much time in.
Definitely, yeah, that sounds good. So, do you think it is important to read a certain book at a certain age or a certain time in your life? Do you think that matters?
Every book you read, every experience you have, everything you learn, it just makes you who you are. If you surround yourself with good people that lead to good experiences, if you read books that are beneficial and that allow you to learn something, doesn't matter what it is, but learn something about anything, all those things equip you to handle life better, right? I mean, if I had read 1,000 books before I was 12, I would have a much broader knowledge base just in general, right? They're just tools that help equip you to handle things in life. I mean, don't spend all your life reading, right? Go out and explore the world and experience things, learn through practical experience, obviously, but there are many books out there written by very intelligent people that have a lot of wisdom to share that really resonate with certain people, but with certain people at certain ages in their life when things can be most difficult. As a teenager, as a young person, you are naive, you're quite raw. You have just as many emotions as an adult, but you don't have as many tools to manage them. And if you don't learn how to manage them as a teenager and learn how to manage stress and anxiety and anger, if you don't develop those tools at a young age, they become harder and harder to develop over time. As you get set into your ways and into your habits. And if you read this book, you'll understand your ego takes hold of you if you don't have the tools that you need to disarm it.
I see books like building blocks, basically. So the more and different ones you read, they will go there in the background, and help you build your own worldview, basically. So that's how I see books. So even though you might not get them, as you said, they might plant the seed of knowledge, or it creates that appetite for learning and you want to discover more, and then you look for other books or different books that could help you discover more about the things you want to know. And I think that's an important thing to do. But the hardest thing to do is basically to start reading and get into the habit of reading, because otherwise it's difficult to discover all the knowledge and the experience that others have written about, and it's all there. I think all the secrets of our day-to-day experience and how to improve our lives, basically, they're already there, written somewhere, but we just need to discover them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think this day and age, it's difficult for people to make time to read. I mean, I used to read as a teenager, I used to read before I went to bed. I'd always have a book beside my bed and a novel typically. But as you grow older and with social media, let's be honest, usually you just scroll through your phone before you go to bed instead of reading. I've been trying recently to actually use a reading lamp and read a physical book before bed. But I mean, let's be honest, it is difficult. I mean, we can make excuses if we want to, but it is getting harder and harder. Our lives are a lot busier. There's a lot more expected of us in our life. So it is difficult, but I agree with you as well that it's good to take time, not just for the knowledge, but also to slow things down, to disconnect from the world a little bit, to take our eyes off of screens, to protect our eyes and get us ready for sleep. If you read with a lamp instead of a blue light coming from your screen before you go to bed, is better for you in general. But I also, want to throw it out there that audiobooks and podcasts are extremely popular, like yours. People are listening to this right now. That is such a good alternative to reading. I read somewhere, and don't quote me on this, I don't know the source, but I did read somewhere that listening to an audiobook activates the same parts of the brain as actually physically reading the book. Like it ignites the same parts of the imagination as you're visualizing what the author is describing. So it's very, very beneficial just to listen to podcasts and audiobooks. There's a lot of free resources out there. A lot of us commute to work, maybe not so much anymore. Maybe a lot of us work remotely nowadays, but if you're commuting to work, I mean, if you have a half hour, an hour commute each way, that is 1 to 2 hours a day that you could be learning something passively. I mean, you read a book, do not put the pressure on yourself to try to remember every single word in a book, right? Like that's not healthy. As you said, books are building blocks. If you read an entire novel, a 500-page self-help book, whatever it's going to be, and all you take away from it is like one sentence or one idea, that is one more tool you have in your tool chest. Yeah, maybe most of the book wasn't that useful to you, didn't find it, you didn't resonate with you as much as you would have liked it to. But if you take away one thing from like a self-help book, one thing from a new dieting book, or one new exercise from a fitness book, or one investing tip from an investment financial freedom book, right? Those are just one more tool. It's just one more tool that you have in your toolbox to help you through the harder, difficult parts of life. It's hard to find time to sit and read a book, but it is not that hard to find time to listen to an audiobook or listen to a podcast. As I said, most of us commute. I usually listen to or watch YouTube videos on either the industry or game design or minimalist living or my audiobooks while I cook, while I do chores, while I clean the house, while I wash the car, while I mow the lawn. If I'm going for a walk, by myself, I'll have my headphones in. There are so many minutes in a day you can fill with learning and acquiring new knowledge these days that we're so lucky to have those at our fingertips, that are very affordable, if not free. I recommend just taking advantage of that. Don't put so much pressure on yourself to have to read a whole novel every month. I recommend it. I hope you do. I hope you make that part of your routine, even 5-10 minutes a day. Maybe start a book club, or with the social media, you can start a group with your friends to read a novel, and then have a call to talk about it, right? Those are good tools you can use to try and get yourself actually physically reading. But if you're someone who has a very busy life, or not to be negative, but if you make excuses or have excuses or explanations, let's say, explanations as to why you don't have time to read, there are other ways that you can still acquire the same knowledge without having to totally change your lifestyle or feel bad about it. Like you want to start a book, you buy a new book, one night you read 5 pages, and one night you read 10 pages, the next night you read 3 pages, the next night you read 1 page, and then the book sits and collects dust for months. And then every time you look at it, you feel bad about yourself because you don't have time to read, or you don't make time to read. Don't put that kind of pressure on yourself either, right? Try to make it part of your routine and try to enjoy it when you do it. If you don't get a chance to do it, don't beat yourself up over it. If you're sad that you're not doing it, try the audiobook or podcast route, because it's helped me a lot, and I've gotten through a lot of content and gained a lot of knowledge by making that change first. And then as I've started to enjoy the audiobooks more and more, and I'm willing to make the time to read an actual physical book, I'm starting to enjoy that part of it again.
Yeah, that's how I started getting into audiobooks, because I have a long commute. So I go 1 hour and a half one way, 1 hour and a half to come back home. So I said, well, I've got all this time, 3 hours every day, and I'm not using them. So that's how I started listening to audiobooks, and I enjoy it. And what you said about people not finding time, or maybe they think that they can't find anything that they would enjoy, I'm 99% that everyone can find something they like or they love in, as you said, it doesn't have to be a book or a novel. It could be YouTube, it could be a podcast, it could be something, I don't know, something that of interest. Even if you say, "Oh, I don't like books, I like to watch Netflix." I'm sure there are podcasts talking about movies and about stuff that people enjoy.
Yeah, and it can be anything. It can be sports, it can be music, it can be home renos, it can be finance. If you're struggling with finance and saving, and you don't understand the stock market, I mean, there's tons of stuff. It might be hard to learn through audio some of those things, but as I said, it's better than listening to nothing or just the same songs on the radio all the time. You will start to pick it up through osmosis. 3 hours a day is a long time. I mean, when you go to university, most of the time you are just sitting there listening to somebody talk at you, right? So, you can get a master's degree in a couple of years of commuting, if you think of it that way, a master's degree worth of knowledge. You do have to take a little bit of time to find the podcasts and download them in advance and things like that. You know what I mean? So like you do have to cut, not a lot of time, but do understand that you do have to cut a bit of time into your day to do that as well. It takes a little bit of prep work. But that's one of those things where if you're sitting at night with the TV on, scrolling through your phone, scrolling through social media, next time you do that, take a mental note. Say, I'm scrolling through, I'm not really reading what I'm looking at. I'm still on my phone. I'm going to just take a quick look and see and go look at some podcasts. Have a browse, see what I like. Maybe I'm going to look up that book that Andy and Tyler talked about that one time on that podcast. I'm going to look up some books that Andy recommended, or some podcasts that are automatically recommended to me that are similar to Andy's podcast, and just have a quick browse. Download a couple of them while you're on your Wi-Fi at home, right? And the next day you wake up in the morning and you get in your car to go to work, and you're like, oh, I don't know what I should listen to. I don't know. You've already downloaded them. They're already there. Just say, I don't know if I'll like it or not, but I'm just going to press play, and I'm on my car and off I go. And if it's great, awesome, you found a new podcast, you learned something. If it's not so great, well, then you're no worse off than if you didn't listen to it on your way to work that day, and then on your lunch break, download something different, and then on the way home, listen to something different, right? And it will not take you long to find stuff you like. And then once you find something you like, you'll find more recommendations, and it will snowball and snowball and snowball. And then, in a couple of years' time, you'll look back and just be amazed at how much you've grown just from the knowledge that you've gained.
Yeah, absolutely agreeing with you 100%. I can feel it in my own experience, so I definitely agree with what you're saying. Tyler, do you have any other hobbies other than board games? I mean, I don't even know if I can class board games as a hobby for you because you're in the business, so it's work for you.
My day job is not actually designing games. My hobby is still designing games. I still love the creative process. I love writing. I've always been a writer. I wanted to be a novelist when I was, in my early teens as well as one of my passions. I do enjoy doing graphic design for my prototypes. But apart from that, I love doing yoga. It's kind of parallel to dance, but without all the pressure. So I quite enjoy that. And I've recently started taking Taekwondo. Martial arts was something that I always wanted to do as a kid, but dance training just took up all my time. And this year I decided, yeah, I need some more ways to get fit. I've always wanted to do it, so I'm gonna go learn something new. It's been really great. It's been really interesting to go and learn something like martial arts, which is very similar to dance as well. But this time, approaching a very similar art form, right, which involves learning moves, I suppose, learning techniques, perfecting those techniques, performing those techniques, right, very similar to dance. It's very interesting now starting something new with the knowledge and wisdom and the experience I had as a dancer and knowing where the anxieties came from and where the passion left. And now that I can approach something new that is so similar physically and mentally, but with a new state of mind where I can start fresh. It's like a fresh start, being like, I can start something new and be passionate about it. And now I'm equipped with all the things that I've learned over my life. And when those negative feelings, anxieties come back to me, I am much better equipped to get rid of them and just enjoy doing it. And I might make mistakes. I might not be very good at it. I might have physical limitations. I might have mental limitations when I do it. But I'm much better equipped to not give in to those negative thoughts and just enjoy it for what it is. So I've really, really enjoyed getting into that. And part of that was, again, the knowledge that I've gained from books and people and experiences in my life that allow me to approach a new task, a new challenge, being much better equipped and being able to enjoy it for what it is.
How do you juggle the time between family, work, hobbies? How is that working for you?
Set up routines. If you don't schedule your day, you'll probably just procrastinate, not do anything. Just like with reading, if you don't make the time for it, you're probably not going to actually do it. So yeah, I just structure my days. My family life is on a tight schedule. Luckily, I work from home, so I can arrange my schedule. It's quite flexible how I can arrange my schedule. So I kind of know when is family time, when is work time, and then I know where my quote free time is, when I can design games, when I can allow myself a chance to relax, when I can schedule in my fitness and workouts, which I'm trying to do better this year with actually scheduling those in. Because once again, if I don't schedule a time to stop working and do a quick workout, I'm just not going to do it in the day. So that's something I'm still working on, as we all are trying to get better at everything. But yeah, I think it's all about establishing routines and schedules. And that includes scheduling time off, whether it be for reading or for playing video games or for watching Netflix or for going for a walk or whatever it is that you enjoy. It's just as important to schedule that, because most people, though, that goes to the wayside. And it goes as far as even like scheduling chores. Like I know, on a Saturday, I just kind of know this hour is for cleaning the house. During my weeknights, this is my time to cook dinner. This is, just working on a schedule allows you to make time for the things that you have to make time for and the things that you want to make time for. So I definitely recommend sticking to a schedule as best you can and making sure you schedule in that time to relax. It's just so much more enjoyable too. Like it's so much more guilt-free. If I was scheduling in like an hour where I can just like play video games, I don't have to worry about what I should be doing during that time because I've already covered it, right? I've already planned it. All the tasks I have to do, I've planned for and I've accounted for, so I can sit and veg and do whatever I want and not have to worry about it. I highly recommend doing that. And that it takes a while to get there, and I'm still working on it. But, I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, sounds great, but I'm sure a lot of people will think I don't have time to make time for a schedule. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about things that you say you don't have time for them. And you basically want to show people that there is time, but it's up to you to divide it properly and allocate it basically.
Yeah, you have to make time for these things. I'm sure people have heard that phrase before. And we all have the same time. We all have the same hours in a day, every single person, right? So yeah, it's how you allocate it and how you prioritize it, right? And that's why I say if you're going to be, putting together a schedule, I'm not saying like a written schedule, like this is every hour allotted in my day, right? Like mine's in my head. Like I just know my day. I have a child, I have a job, my wife works, we trade off, taking care of the little guy. My day is pretty generally scheduled anyways between work and family life. But then making time on certain nights, like for example, game design is important to me. It's something I really enjoy doing. So on a Tuesday and Wednesday from 8 p.m. till 9:30, that's my allotted time to do game design. If I don't feel particularly inspired that day, I might choose to do something else during that time, or I might, the times where I have to get something done or really, really want to accomplish something with game design, I will make a mini task list for what I want to get done. So when I get to the desk at 8 o'clock at night, kids are in bed, and I'm like, okay, I'm not feeling inspired, but this is the time I have this week to work on something that I am passionate about. I just don't feel passionate right now. I'll just go to my task list and say, okay, I've got these tasks to do, and I'm going to do them during this time. And yes, it does feel like work a little bit on those days when that happens. But the following week, when I am really psyched about it and I do get to my desk at 8 o'clock at night, I'm like, oh man, I'm really stoked to do this. I've kind of done the mundane tasks the week before, so now I can just like, whatever I want to do that day is just write or just draw or just play the game that I designed the week before, right? Again, it's that sometimes things feel like work, but there's a benefit to it, right? Trying to be productive and trying to prioritize what's important to you in life and trying to find the joy. If you can't find the joy in the moment, then finding the joy of the future that's going to bring you.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I do the same. I find ways to force myself to do things that I like sometimes because it is very easy to find excuses and not to do the things you want to do. And it's like one day I was thinking I wanted to start running, and I was driving back from work, and I was finding all these excuses. It's late, I'm hungry, it's raining, I don't have the proper shoes, I don't have my favorite t-shirt, and all these excuses. And I remember that famous Nike ad where they said, just do it. So I stopped thinking of anything, and I just put my shoes on and just went out for a run. So that was great. I was so proud of myself for not letting the excuses get me.
Yeah, and I bet you felt amazing after that run, not just, emotionally because you overcame that, but, physically you probably felt great.
Yes, I did.
And then it also probably helped equip you for the next time you don't feel very motivated to know that, I can do this. I can get over this wall.
Yeah, yeah, I know it's difficult. It's really difficult sometimes, but I'm trying to find ways to force me to do things that I like. It's like with board games and designing. I used to set up meetings, or I used to buy tickets for conventions and all these things that will force me in the future to just go and do something in that area. Little things like that. I think that's my secret. I force myself to do things that I like sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, speaking of writing as a metaphor, and games as well, like with the games you were saying, like, you book, this is what I have done before as well, is like book a playtest slot at a convention, and you book the slot so you have the table for an hour, but then you gotta have something to present, right? So it kind of forces you to like work on something that has something to present. And with running, a lot of people you'll notice that's quite common is they'll sign up for like a marathon in like 3 months' time, right? Is that long-term goal, which is a great tool to help you motivate you. But I think what's really effective is setting yourself up for success. And this is where, like, when I talk about my task list for game design, especially when I'm inspired, on those nights where I'm inspired, I'll write my to-do list of what has to be done. And some of it's very mundane, some of it is super exciting. But I make that list so that when I do get to the desk, when I'm not motivated, I can do the mundane tasks during that time. I've got a list. All I have to do is like a robot, follow the list. For other hobbies, like running or reading, like for reading, have the book beside your nightstand. Maybe have a timer set on your watch or something. For running, if you want to get up in the morning to run, have your running clothes ready to go the night before. Have your shoes ready to go for you to step into them. Have a granola bar or a protein bar by your shoes. You can eat that right away, so you're not, oh, I'm too hungry, I want to have breakfast before I go. Like, set yourself up for success so that when the time comes and everything in your brain is making an excuse if you not to do the thing that you want to do that's going to lead to your success, all you have to do is just do it. Everything is already there. You've done all the background work. You set yourself up. All you got to do is step into those shoes, lace them up, and just do it. The more you can prepare in advance and set yourself up, the easier it's going to be to get through those humps. Because there'll be days where it's not hard at all, right? You can't wait to go for a run. You've got a new podcast you downloaded. It's a beautiful day out. You got a new set of shoes you can't wait to try out. Great, but that's not going to be most of the time, right? And if you want to achieve your goals, whether they be fun goals, like I do want to play a video game, right? Like I do want to spend an hour tonight playing a video game, then set yourself up so you complete all your chores in advance, and then you don't have to, you can do it guilt-free. It works the same for fun stuff, and it works the same for fitness goals. It works the same for professional goals in your career. Set yourself up so that on the days and the moments where you aren't motivated, where your brain is telling you no, where you're making up excuses, all you have to do is just shut it off and go on autopilot, and that will help you break through those barriers.
Well, Tyler, you said you work on a ship for a few years. Have you traveled a lot back then?
Yeah, no, that was the best way to travel, really. Every day you're in a new port, so yeah, it was quite a lot of traveling. I didn't get to spend a lot of time in each port because you're there for usually just the day, but yeah, I did get a chance to see a fair few parts of the world: the Mediterranean, Baltics, Norway, Alaska, Hawaii, Mexico, and the Caribbean. I also backpacked Australia, as I kind of mentioned earlier, as well as a little bit of Thailand, and then a little bit of Cambodia as well.
Well, have you had any interesting experience you might want to share with us?
Well, I think just the act of traveling in general is a good experience. I think traveling anywhere is helpful, especially outside your own country. I mean, we're coming from Europe, so it's a little bit easier out here than it is over in North America. But getting that fresh perspective is good. But I think more important than that is maybe living somewhere different for a little while. There's a lot of countries that will allow a youth visa if you're under 30 or something like that to go live somewhere. Just for a year or a couple of years to throw yourself outside your comfort zone and learn a new culture and kind of throw yourself into a new place and kind of force yourself to make friends and make changes and stuff like that is a really valuable experience, and really allows you to see the world in a different light. So I did little itty bits of traveling here and there, but like moving to the UK and like living in Australia for 6 months, that was a much more profound experience, as a human being in general. So I recommend spending an extended time in a place if you have the opportunity in your life.
Basically, you've experienced three different cultures: North America, Europe, and Australia. So, how did you find them?
Those countries in particular are all very similar. They're all Western countries. Canada is to the USA as Australia is to the UK. I find a lot like the pop culture and stuff in Australia is very much influenced by the UK, and whereas the pop culture in Canada is very much influenced by the US. It wasn't very hard to adjust because English language was spoken everywhere, but there were a lot of subtleties. So I mean, if you want to go someplace comfortable, go somewhere where you can speak the language, I suppose. But even then, even like going to Australia, it was different enough. The culture, subtly different and yet incredibly different in many different ways. But also, it wasn't to the point where like I wasn't sure if I would survive, right? So if you're gonna move somewhere, just be smart about it. Don't be reckless with where you're going to travel. But every country, every culture is, in some cases, every city in a certain country, is a little bit different from each other, and it's just nice to experience those things and just kind of get a fresh perspective on how different people live their lives around the world.
It's such a different experience from traveling to a country as a tourist and living in a different country. It's a totally different experience. Yeah. Any plans for the future? What would you like to achieve, Tyler?
Well, in games, I would like to have a published game design in the near future. That's always been a goal of mine. So working heavily towards that. I think constantly I'm working towards the work-life balance. taking time for myself, for fitness and for mental health, allowing my family to have time for their physical and mental health as well, and then just growing professionally in general. I mean, nothing specific at the moment, so apart from getting a game signed. Every chapter of your life kind of comes with its own set of sub goals, I suppose. But right now I'm doing all right. 2022 is off to a good start.
Yeah, it's all right long as you've got a target. Doesn't matter how big or small, or you know you're going forward. So that's good. Do you have a favorite quote or a life principle or idea that guides your life?
Yeah, there's a quote that I think was really termed by Hannibal of Carthage, and in English it's translated to "I will find a way" or "I will make one." That one's always stuck with me with any goal in your life, right? You either find a way to achieve it, or you have to make your own way to do it. And that, again, that kind of wraps around to what you and I have been talking about this whole time, about achieving your goals and long-term goals and short-term goals, and finding time and getting rid of excuses, right? If you want something, you got to find a way to get it or make a way to get it.
Well, thank you, Tyler, for your time and for being a guest on my podcast. So do come back again.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
Brilliant. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, friends, for listening to our podcast. See you next week. Bye.